Most of us don't struggle because we don't want connection. We struggle because connection is harder than we expected it to be. As adults, we have good ideas, good intentions, good hearts, and yet somehow relationships still fracture. Teams still misfire. Communities still feel shallow. People still feel unseen. And over time, I started asking a different question. Not why don't people care, but why is connection so difficult, even when people do care? That question has shaped almost everything I'm going to share with you today. For almost a decade, I've been a preschool director and I've loved it. Before that, I earned a degree from the University of Pennsylvania in philosophy, politics, and economics. I wanted to study how people made decisions, how systems work, and why human behavior so often doesn't line up with human intention. And here's what surprised me. The greatest lesson about adults I learned from children. Because children are a microcosm of society. They want friends, they want to belong, they want to be kind, they want to do well, and yet connection is still hard. I would watch kids desperately want friendship, but struggle with how to build it. These weren't mean children, they weren't malicious, they were just missing the tools that they needed to be successful. And as I moved between working with children and adults in business and people in ministry, I realized something unsettling. We don't actually outgrow this problem, we just get better at hiding. Connection doesn't just automatically deepen with age. If anything, it gets more complicated. That realization planted this deep seed in me. So what is PRE? PRE is a framework for growing deep, healthy, sustainable connection in your relationships, in the way that you lead, in community, in families, in organizations, in churches. It stands for proximity, relationship, education, and empathy. But here's the most important thing I need you to hear. This is not just a list of random values, it's a sequence. Most of us fail not because we hold the wrong values, but because we apply the right values in the wrong order. Proximity. The first step is proximity. Proximity means getting close enough to understand what's actually happening, not theorizing from afar, not deciding from a distance, not judging without context. Proximity is perspective. And there is this story in scripture that really reshaped how I think about it. The parable of the Good Samaritan. The first thing the Samaritan does is not help. It's not fix. It's not instruct. He gets close. Others pass by, perhaps with good reasons, good theology, good intentions, but from a distance. And distance strips nuance. When you're too close to something, you miss the big picture. When you're too far from something, you miss the truth. Proximity is being close enough that the situation still makes sense. Connection can't be built from a bird's eye view alone. The second pillar is relationship. Proximity opens the door, relationship builds the house. Relationship is trust over time. You can be physically close to someone and have no relationship. And without relationship, influence is fragile. Relationship requires investment and time, attention, consistency. It's not about intensity, it's about intentionality. And one of the biggest mistakes we make is only interacting when something goes wrong. Correction without connection feels like control. Guidance without relationship feels like criticism. Relationship creates emotional equity. And emotional equity is what allows hard conversations to land without really breaking trust. Third principle is education. It's a shared understanding. Education is not information. Education is shared understanding. It's common language, common expectations. You develop a common clarity. I saw this clarity in banking environment. I once observed really closely. Executives would sit far from local branches and make decisions like, we need to push customers to ATMs. On paper, it made complete sense. But the people in the branches who had proximity, who knew their clients personally, they knew that those relationships had been built over years. And from their perspective, pushing people away from tellers wasn't efficiency, it was erosion. Here's the thing, both sides were intelligent, both sides cared, but they were operating with different knowledge. Education bridges that gap. It prevents people from missing each other, not because they disagree, but because they misunderstand. Assumptions destroy connection. Shared understanding protects it. And that brings us to empathy. Empathy is the soil everything else grows in. Empathy says, I see you. I understand your context. I recognize your humanity. Empathy doesn't remove standards. It makes growth possible. Empathy explains behavior without excluding it. And when people feel understood, they become open to change. Leadership without empathy feels like management. Leadership with empathy feels like care. I remember running into this kid a couple years back. I want to make this concept concrete for you. He described himself as a troublemaker. He would throw chairs, he was defiant, he was difficult. He was being removed from his previous school. And when I met him, my first step wasn't discipline, it was proximity. I invited him to my desk, we colored together, he told me some of his favorite stories. Because closeness reveals truth. We built a relationship. I invested in what he cared about. I didn't only interact when he misbehaved, and through that relationship, I learned something critical. He had built a narrative about himself. He said, I am a bad boy. That's what he told. That's what he'd been told. And that's what he believed. And because there was now this emotional equity, when correction was needed, it landed differently. Empathy changed everything. Not because the standards disappeared, but because understanding finally had appeared. That child didn't transform into someone new. The truth is, he revealed who he had been all along. So, who is this all for? This framework began in leadership, but it lives in relationships. It's for adults who want deeper connection, leaders who want healthier teams, people who care but feel stuck. Anyone who knows relationships matter but lacks a map. As we get older, connection doesn't come easier. It comes more intentionally, or not at all. Pre is not a system to run. It's a way to grow. So how do you apply it? When something feels off, we don't escalate. First, we diagnose. We ask, do I have proximity or am I just deciding from a distance? Is there a real relationship here or just an expectation? Has there been shared understanding or assumption? Am I leading with empathy or only authority? Growth follows order. So this is just the beginning, not the whole garden, just the first planting. Connection grows when we honor the process. Proximity, relationship, education, empathy. This is the work. This is the art. This is the garden. And if you're willing to grow it patiently, you'll be surprised by what takes root. You got this.